Oh, man.
Sorry. We started the podcast. Excuse me. Welcome back, everybody, to episode 50. 50, what a great number 50 is, Ryan. Beautiful out today. Today's just been a fantastic day.
Oh, man.
Anyways, facts over feelings. Ryan and I are back to talk a lot of basketball, a little college football news as well. Go Suns. Anyways, Ryan, I feel like it's fitting that we start with my Phoenix Suns.
It is.
We're going to go through every playoff series. Disclaimer, we're not only going to talk about the Suns for the whole hour, but we are going to start with my Phoenix Suns in a 4-0 sweep of the Denver Nuggets. The last game just went final about an hour ago, a little less than an hour ago.
Yeah.
Ryan, I will give you the first word on this because I have a lot to say. I'm sure you have a lot to say, but I just want you to get your piece out of the way because you just were not right about this prediction, but go ahead.
Trevor, normally I would try to push back on you. I'd say, Trevor, no. Look, you can't talk trash about my predictions. I'm pretty good at this, but look, I deserve to be made fun of for what I said last week on the podcast. I said Nuggets in 7, and look, the Nuggets didn't just lose. They embarrassed me. Okay, they made me and every other person who thought the Denver Nuggets stood a chance look like absolute clowns. The Denver Nuggets, Trevor, this team that I watched in this series, they weren't the same team I watched in the Portland series. They weren't the same team I watched in the back half of that regular season without Jamal Murray. This team, I didn't recognize this team, Trevor. And you know who I also didn't recognize? I didn't just not recognize the Nuggets. I didn't recognize Michael Porter Jr. And Trevor knows off the air, I like to talk about Michael Porter Jr. I like the guy. I think he's a really good player. And I've talked about him on this podcast, how crucial it would be for him in this series to step up. I knew he needed to step up. I knew it was imperative that he stepped up, made his shots, averaged 25 points a game or more even in this series, which he did last series against Portland. He stepped up big time, Trevor. He made big time shots. He made shots with consistency against Portland. Game after game, he was crossing that 20-point threshold, which he needed to do. In this series, Trevor, I think he only made over 20 points in a game one time. And that was tonight.
He had 20 tonight.
And that was tonight. And let me tell you, the series is already done by tonight, Trevor. They were down 3-0. Teams were 0-142 going in. They're now 0-143 when down 3-0. Great job, Michael Porter. You really stepped up big time. What an absolute disappointment, Trevor. He did not hit his shots. He missed 3 after 3 after 3. I heard there were rumors of him having a back injury. I don't care, honestly. I didn't see him limping. I didn't see him, grimacing in pain. So I don't want to hear the excuses. I've made a lot of excuses for the teams against the Suns so far this year. That's over with, okay? I'm not making an excuse for Michael Porter Jr. I'm not making an excuse for the Denver Nuggets. They were abysmal. Right. They were trash. No one made their shots. Will Barton came back, tried to save them. He put them on his shoulders, honestly. He had 25 points tonight. He did his best. Marcus Morris played well. He tried his best too. I don't know, Trevor. I don't know. This team did not look good. Jokic put up empty numbers. Let me tell you, folks, when you look at Nikola Jokic's numbers this series, you go, wow, this is amazing numbers he put up. He's a great player. He just couldn't carry his team. No. You watch these games, Trevor. Jokic wasn't making shots when he needed to. In those second and third quarters, when the Suns would go on runs, Jokic, brick after brick after brick. Almost every game, Trevor. I think tonight was the only game that he had over 50% shooting. I think tonight he was, before he got ejected, he was 9 for 17 from the floor, so just above 50%. I think tonight was the only game where he had over 50% shooting from the floor, which is unacceptable if you're a Nikola Jokic. You're the MVP. You show up for your team, not just once, not just twice, every single game. And he didn't do that. All right. He did not do that in this series. I needed to see more. He wasn't able to get past DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton outplayed him in this series on the defensive end. He just did. And I didn't like what I saw at all. I need to go in on these Nuggets because they deserve it. A 4-0 sweep is disgusting. I don't care how good the Suns are. I don't care how hot they are. It's disgusting. And look, Trevor wants to talk about this, but I need to mention it first. Aaron Gordon is a disgrace to the NBA. He's an absolute disgust to this organization, to this association.
Hey, he was our MVP. What are you talking about?
Trevor, the Orlando Magic traded Aaron Gordon, and I believe they got a first-round pick in return, Trevor. I believe they got a first-round pick.
Highway robbery right now.
Absolute highway robbery. This guy was a solid contributor in the regular season. It looked like a solid deal. He comes into these playoffs, Trevor. I don't think I've seen a guy miss more shots and take more shots on a consistent basis than Aaron Gordon. I think tonight was his best game since game 1, Trevor. He went 3 for 8. He went 3
Pretty
for
good.
8. I mean, by Aaron Gordon standards, that's fantastic. He was a minus 14 in the box plus minus. That's really good for Aaron Gordon. So, I needed to call him out and all these other players out. It was just an absolute disgrace. And I don't care the talent gap. I don't care if you're missing your second best player. To go get swept by the Phoenix Suns after beating Damian Lillard and the Trailblazers in 6, it's a travesty. And I'm really, really disappointed in the Nuggets. Trevor, I'll let you go ahead, say what you want to say, and then I'll talk about what the Suns did in this series. But I want you to take it away.
Ryan, you had your chance to make up for all your sin towards my Phoenix Suns, and you failed. What you said was true, but it's not what needed to be said.
Really?
The story of the series was not the Denver Nuggets being abysmal. The story of this series was Chris Paul's slap in the face to the NBA and everyone who voted for Nikola Jokic to be this season's MVP. Chris Paul in these 4 games showed you why he was the true MVP this year. I could go to game 4. What was his stat line tonight? 37 points, 14 for 19 from the field, 9 for 9 from the free throw line, 7 assists, 2 steals, only had 2 turnovers, which is by his standards horrible because he only had 3 turnovers in the first 3 games of the series. Chris Paul is the story of this series. Chris Paul played like a legitimate top 5 NBA player. He played like a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I told Ryan off the air, I said, Ryan, Chris Paul, there are maybe 3 or 4 guys in the NBA I would trust more to close a game than Chris Paul. That list has dwindled to maybe 1 or 2. It's LeBron and Kevin Durant and Chris Paul. Those are the 3 guys I have the most trust in closing NBA games. You look at Chris Paul this series, he missed 2 shots in the fourth quarter in 4 games. 2 shots. He went 6 for 6 in the fourth quarter from game 1. I believe he had 18 in the fourth quarter tonight. In the series, he had 41 assists to 5 turnovers. And I told you before the playoffs, I said, Ryan, Chris Paul is going to be more of an offensive, not facilitator, but he's going to assert himself scoring-wise because we're going to need him to assert himself scoring-wise if we want to go deep in the playoffs. The Lakers series, I'm going to throw away because he wasn't himself for the first 3 or 4 games. This series, he showed his assertiveness. 37 tonight. I don't have game 3 pulled up, but I believe he had somewhere in the ballpark of 20 to 25 in game 3. Maybe it was game 2. I'm going to pull up the box score real quick. No, he had 27 in game 3. I believe he had 21 or 23 in game 2. This guy completely took over the series, and I've been raving about him all year. He has changed the Phoenix Suns as a franchise. He was the MVP. I think Jokic's flashy numbers and Jamal Murray going down, I think that clouded my judgment a little bit. But this series told me, and this series should have told the entire NBA, as Colin Cowherd said, that Chris Paul was the MVP this year. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Wow.
That discussion is closed. I'm going to move on to the next element of this series, and I'm going to talk about the Denver Nuggets.
Please do.
They weren't good. I knew their backcourt was going to be a huge problem. I said it at the beginning of the series, our backcourt is going to dominate theirs, and that was true. Devin Booker and Chris Paul went for 71 in game 4 tonight.
Booker didn't have a great game.
Campazzo played hard, but there's just a huge skill drop-off. And Austin Rivers, there's a reason why they picked him off the street. Picked him up off the street. He's not a good player. He had a couple good games against Portland, and Ryan thought he was the second coming of, Michael Jordan. Well, actually, he thought Michael Porter. He actually got Michael Porter Jr. mixed up with Michael Jordan. Excuse me. He thought Austin Rivers was Steph Curry because he made a couple threes against Portland. And I told Ryan, I said, Ryan, the backcourt's going to be too much for Jokic to overcome. I also said, I'm just going to be raving about myself because I got this exactly right.
You did say Suns in 6.
Okay, well, I almost said 5. I went 6 because I didn't want to get cocky, but now I'm going to get cocky.
Okay.
I also said that Nikola Jokic will not be able to dominate DeAndre Ayton like everyone thinks he will. And Nikola Jokic said it himself. He said DeAndre Ayton is one of the toughest guys for me to beat in the NBA. He said it. That's Nikola Jokic's words, not mine. Nikola Jokic goes, DeAndre Ayton is one of the toughest guards for me in the NBA. And DeAndre Ayton showed that. Nikola Jokic had big numbers. I mean, he averaged probably 27 a game. He had 32, 20, and 10, but he was very inefficient. I don't think, as Ryan said, he only shot over 50% once in this series. DeAndre Ayton forced Nikola Jokic into an outside threat because Ayton is stronger and he's quicker and he's more athletic and he's a better jumper than Nikola Jokic. All Nikola Jokic has is a better shot and a better handle on the ball, and maybe a better skill set. But if you talk about raw athleticism and raw physical ability, DeAndre Ayton can dominate him. And he didn't necessarily dominate him this series, but he outplayed him inside. I will attest to that. He outplayed Nikola Jokic inside. And I finally, before we get into a little bit of like a smaller discussion about some of the other things regarding this series, one of my final big point I really want to talk about is just this Phoenix Suns offensive chemistry. And tonight we didn't shoot the ball all that well, 36% as a team from three. We still shot over 50% from the floor because we're just so deadly from mid-range. This Phoenix Suns team, if you look at their numbers, 5 players in this series averaged at least 14 points a game. You heard that right. 5 players averaged at least 14 points a game. I believe Jay Crowder was the lowest of the starting 5 who averaged right around 14 a game. The starters in every game, I believe, except for tonight where Jay Crowder had 9 points, every starter in every game scored at least double digits. That's team basketball. And that's why the Phoenix Suns are going to be so hard to beat going forward. Because if you want to double Devin Booker, great. Chris Paul, Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, DeAndre Ayton, someone else is going to beat you. If you want to try and take away Chris Paul's mid-range, great. He's going to find the open guy or give DeAndre Ayton a lob or set up Devin Booker for a shot or set up Jay Crowder in the corner or set up Mikal Bridges. And the Phoenix Suns just love playing for one another. Chris Paul said it. They're having fun out there. They're enjoying themselves. They're relishing the playoffs. Everyone thought young, inexperienced, what will DeAndre Ayton be? What will Devin Booker be? Mikal Bridges, he's young. He hasn't shown us much. Not only have the Suns exceeded expectations, they are showing me that they love playoff basketball more than maybe they like regular season basketball. Or they're relishing more in the playoffs than they were in the regular season. And that should tell you a lot about the young guys. That should tell you a lot about Monty Williams as a coach, as he was robbed of Coach of the Year. And that should tell you a lot about Chris Paul, his on-court leadership, his off-the-court leadership, and now he backed it up with his play. And tonight was it was one of the best closeout game performances of all time. I'll throw it in there.
Oh, from
it's
Chris
up there
Paul.
with yes, from Chris Paul. It's up there with the LeBron James Game 6, where he had 45 and 15 against the Celtics when he was in Miami, I believe. I don't know if that was a closeout game, but that was a Game 6. I think it was a closeout game. It's up there with some of the Kevin Durant closeout games we saw in Golden State. It's up there with Michael Jordan's. I'm being serious when I say this. Tonight was one of the greatest closeout games of all time from Chris Paul. But we can dive a little deeper into some of the more detailed elements of this series, Ryan. But I don't know if you have any rebuttals to what I just said.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't necessarily have any straight rebuttals, but I want to agree with you on some things and disagree with you on a few others. First of all, I want to agree with you that I don't think Jokic should have won MVP. It goes deeper than just like who should have won it this year. And I've said this multiple times. I've said this to you and a lot of people we know.
Playoffs should matter.
Playoffs should be included in these awards. And
totally
this
agree.
is exactly why. You look at the Phoenix Suns. Going to the playoffs, did these people think the Phoenix Suns were even going to beat the Lakers?
No one did.
Did I?
17 of 18 ESPN analysts picked the Lakers. 1 picked the Suns.
That's all you need to know right there. And there's a reason Monty Williams didn't win Coach of the Year. People didn't think he was capable of, out-coaching Thibodeau in New York. They thought he was the better coach, and in the regular season, one could argue he was. But you look at the playoffs, and the Knicks lost in 5. They were a higher seed than the Hawks, and they got smoked. Is that a mark of a Coach of the Year? I don't think so. Monty Williams, on the other hand, beats the defending champions and then sweeps the Denver Nuggets team who were
in the Western Conference Finals last year.
And who were playing really good basketball. They won against the Portland Trailblazers. They won in 6, contrary to a lot of people's beliefs. Trevor here thought the Blazers were going to win this series in 6
listen.
pretty handily. And look, you've gotten a lot of series right.
I said Blazers in 7. I said 7.
Oh, 7. I'm sorry.
And look, real quick before nobody's perfect. I'm close to perfect, but everyone has their flaws.
Look, I was going to say, you've done a good job predicting these playoffs, but point being, like a lot of people, most people predicted the Trailblazers coming out of that series because they had more talent and Lillard's a, more flashier player, hits bigger shots, typically, can go on more runs than a guy like Jokic can, but the Nuggets outplayed them thoroughly at the end of that series, especially. They did. And they clutched up. And they've clutched up for over a year now, down 3-1 twice in a row last year, came back to win those series. Point being, no one saw this coming. So Monty Williams deserves the credit. That's why I think these awards should include the playoffs, because you don't know what's going to come. You don't know who's going to show out. You don't know who's going to show up bigger than ever before, or who's going to choke and not show up when it matters most. I don't think Chris Paul should have won MVP. I don't think he had the numbers for it. While I do think he had a great, I've talked about it at length. He's had wonders. He's had a wondrous impact on this team this year, Trevor. He's the reason that they're the 2 seed. He's the reason they are where they are right now. But like numbers have to matter a little bit, right? So like that's just my opinion. But without a doubt, he is the probably right now, Trevor, the best leader in the NBA. And I don't even really think it's close. I really don't even think it's close. I mean, like,
I totally agree with that.
I mean, you look at guys on other teams right now that are left in the playoffs, and the only other guy I would argue that's a leader is Donovan Mitchell, and he's only 24, 25 years of age, so I don't even really think, it's hard to give a guy who's that young that kind of mantle. But I don't think Giannis is necessarily, a leader for that team. I don't think Kawhi's a leader. I don't think Kevin Durant's a leader. I don't think Kyrie Irving's a leader. Joel Embiid, maybe. I don't think he's a leader like Chris Paul is. It's not even close. So I got to give credit where credit's due. He's been fantastic, not only on the court. While he was hurt in that Lakers series, he was still helping that team off the court and just with his presence on the floor, just a calming presence. He just calmed this team down every time he steps onto the floor, Trevor. And it's really crazy to see. And I'll say this, in this third and fourth quarters, he couldn't miss. They did everything they could. They did everything they could. The Nuggets did. They switched. They put different defenders on him. They put Porter Jr. on him. They put Gordon on him. They put Campazzo on him. They put a bunch of different guys on him. No one could stop him. He would shoot the same mid-range at the same exact spot on the floor, Trevor. I think 4 or 5 times at least.
That's bad coaching, and that's bad. That's bad coaching. That's bad. I'm glad you. That's exactly where I was going to pick it up.
I don't even think it's bad coaching though. That's just he's unbelievable. It is. He's just unbelievable. So I got to give credit where credit's due. At his age, it's sensational. And there was another thing I wanted to get to, but I will get to it after you. You bring up a couple.
I'm glad you brought up the Chris Paul getting to his spot because Denver did not play the screen and roll well at all this series. And it's evident, and it's actually a little bit of Nikola Jokic's fault. And I also, this is to my next point. This is why they low key did better without him when he left the game. Nikola Jokic, as I said already, is not a very athletic guy. So what the Nuggets did was to protect him in the pick and roll was they would play drop coverage. And Chris Paul said this in the post-game interview with Chris Haynes on TNT. He said the NBA a few years ago, as they started shooting more and more threes, the pick and roll coverage became a drop coverage. So the big guy would just drop and camp out in the paint and prevent a layup because nobody would shoot mid-ranges anymore. Well, Chris Paul said, I'm going to master this mid-range because if I do, it's going to be open every time. And it was. The whole game, Ryan said it. Chris Paul would get to the same spot on the floor, take that 15-foot mid-range and make it 7 or 8 times in a row. And that's poor defending. If I'm the Denver Nuggets and I see a guy do the same thing 3 times in a row down the floor, why am I not adjusting it? Why am I not adjusting my coverage? Why is Jokic not stepping up and forcing Chris Paul to either take a 3 or go to the rim? If I'm Monte Morris, Will Barton, whoever else is Campazzo, if I'm the guy guarding Chris Paul, when the screen's coming, why am I fighting over it? Why not go under it? Force him to shoot a 3 at least. This guy loves to get to the mid-range. He loves to get to his spot. That is just really poor defending and really poor adjusting by the Denver Nuggets. And I get it. Chris Paul is really hard to guard. I love him. But there's no reason a guy should shoot the same shot from the same exact spot on the floor 5 times in a row.
It was literally 5 times in a row.
I'm not exaggerating. Legit. It was. Like, that should never happen in a playoff game, in an elimination game. It should never happen in any game at any level. In middle school, that shouldn't even happen. So that's just really poor defending by the Nuggets. And the final point I have on Denver is I've been saying it all along, but it took a little longer to come to fruition. Denver was going to miss Jamal Murray. I said it. When he went down, they were going to be able to cover up for it in the regular season, but they were going to see the effects of Jamal Murray in the playoffs. I thought it would come out a little bit more in the Portland series. I was wrong. Jokic was great and the role players stepped up. But that's the thing about the playoffs. You have to have a dependable, consistent number 2. You can't have multiple guys maybe step up one game here and there. That's not going to get the job done. And Jamal Murray was their dependable number 2. We saw it in the bubble last year. He played lights out. And they felt his loss this series. I know Ryan will try to deny it and try to disagree with me, but it's hard to deny because Jamal Murray is the only guy on this team that can consistently create an outside shot. Michael Porter can hit a catch and shoot shot. He can hit a catch and shoot contested shot, but he cannot create an outside shot yet. I think he will. I think that's the next phase in his game and defense. He's a really bad defender. But Jamal Murray is the only dependable guy on this team to create an outside shot and hit tough contested shots from the outside as well.
Yeah, I go back and forth on this, Trevor, because look, I mean, the guy's an all-star. Jamal Murray's fantastic. He's sensational. I doubted him last year. He proved me wrong. Right. And I'm not gonna
The
make
theme
that
of this podcast.
I'm not gonna make that mistake ever again. Okay. Look, while I still think well, I'm not gonna get into it. Regardless, I'm torn between yes, obviously, an all-star is missed. Like, obviously. But I also want to say, like, this team is well coached and disciplined, and I watched them without him for months, and they were playing really good basketball. That's what tears me up, because, like, I don't think all of a sudden they were just like, man, Jamal Murray's really the difference in this series. Like, I think obviously he would have helped, but I think that they could have, that's just kind of an excuse to fall back on for Denver. And I don't want to give them excuses. I know you're not trying to, but like, that's what's good. That's what's going to be said by a lot of Nuggets fans. They're going to say, well, if we had Jamal Murray, this series would have been a lot closer. And it's like, well, listen, you beat the Trailblazers. You won more games without Murray than you did with him, win percentage wise, and you're going to go blame that on losing the series in a sweep on Jamal Murray being hurt? No, you have to blame that on the coaching staff, the effort of the players, and just bad play. I mean, it's as simple as that. Michael Porter Jr. didn't there's so many players, Trevor, that didn't step up. That this team just never. I don't even remember when they had the lead, Trevor. I want to go looks. I don't even remember. In this series, can you remember a moment outside of the first 2 to 3 minutes where they even had a lead? I really can't. Off the top of my head.
Game one, they were leading about halfway into the third quarter, and then they kind of fell apart after that.
Okay. And then all of a sudden they were down by like 15. That was the only time where they were winning outside of, the first minute or two of the game. I mean, in these other 3 games, they didn't even they didn't do anything. I mean, they pulled within 1 tonight. But it's like, wow, I'm so proud of you. You almost didn't get swept. Like, it's just pathetic. And I'm really disappointed in this team. And I wanted to address one more thing, Trevor. It needs to be addressed.
You have to give the Suns their credit. Come on, say it.
Oh, you want me to say this?
I want you to say this exact sentence. Right? This is what you're going to say, right? You repeat after me, Ryan. Trevor, I was wrong about the Phoenix Suns. They can win an NBA championship, and they were fully and completely the better team this series. No excuses.
Trevor, the Phoenix Suns were undoubtedly the better team this series. They not only won this series, but they're going to win the Western Conference Finals. And not only will they make it to the NBA Finals, but they will win the NBA Finals this year. That's my new prediction. The Phoenix Suns are going to beat – look, I don't care if it's the Jazz. I don't care if it's the Los Angeles Clippers. They're beating both of those teams. They're beating both of those teams in 6 games. They're going to go to the NBA. They're going to go to the NBA Finals. I think as long as Brooklyn's not healthy, which it doesn't look like they will be, they're going to lose to the Bucks, because of the injuries. Not because like the Nets would have won the series. They very well might lose to the Bucks. If they do, the Sixers will make the NBA Finals and they will lose to the Suns in 6 games. That's what I'm going to say. These Phoenix Suns, I'm done trying to go against them. I'm done trying to doubt them. Look, if I'm wrong about this, it's not because it's not because I'm crazy.
He's not trying to pull a reverse jinx or anything.
No, I'm really not. Some people think, maybe I am, but I really am not. I really think that this Phoenix Suns team has proven me wrong, and I'm tired of getting proven wrong. I learned my lesson last year with Jamal Murray, and I'm not going to make the same mistake with the Suns. I'm not going to keep betting against them. I've bet against them twice. I won't bet against them again. I think that the Western Conference is now theirs to lose. And while I think that they won't be favored in the NBA Finals, I think that, look, it's hard to bet against a team that's on this much of a roll. And I think the only way they don't win the NBA Finals is if the Nets make it. And if the Nets make it, they will be healthy by then. And I think that they're just no one can beat them. But I don't really know if the Nets will be there because they won't be healthy enough to get there. And I think the Suns, could very well win it all. So I just want to say that right now. And Trevor, before I move on, I wanted to address one more thing, and that was the flagrant 2 on Jokic tonight. This needs to be talked.
We should talk about that.
This really does need to be. This needs to be talked about, Trevor, because look, like, I don't think there's a way you can slice this. You go back 10 years, this doesn't get called. You go back 20 years, this of course doesn't get called. Even right now in today's NBA, it shouldn't be called. Nikola Jokic did not have malicious intent. Nikola Jokic did not go into that play thinking, I don't care if I hit him or not. He was going for the ball. He hit the ball with his hand. And while doing so, there was incidental contact on Cameron Payne's face, which, in my opinion, deserved a flagrant one. It was pretty clear. Double technicals because Booker tried to get in Jokic's face. Like, Jokic is a monster.
As he should. That's the right play by Booker.
He grew up in Eastern Europe. You're not going to intimidate Nikola Jokic. Don't try that again. You're absolutely soft, okay? Don't do that again. But anyway, Nikola Jokic didn't back down from Booker, and Booker, got shown that, you don't go mess with the Joker. But anyway, I think that should have been a flagrant one. It was pretty clear. There was no intention behind it going after Payne. And when he got ejected, he went over to Cameron Payne, said he said sorry. He didn't mean to do it. I believe him, and it didn't look like it to me. He hit him with his forearm, not his hand. I think that it should have been a flagrant one, and I think, Trevor, you might even be in agreement with me.
I am in agreement with you. I unlike you, this is where we slightly disagree. I understand why they called it a flagrant 2 based on the lettering of the law. There was the windup, there was the contact to the face, and obviously it's hard to prove intent. And I agree with you. I don't think Jokic was trying to kill Cameron Payne, as it kind of looked like he was. But there was clear anger behind that swipe. There was clear frustration behind that swipe. It was a frustration foul, and it was a little bit of an anger foul. And I can understand why the refs called it a flagrant 2. And with this reason as well, the refs don't want to completely lose control of the game. It was a hard play. It was a hard foul. Devin Booker gets in Jokic's face, a little bit of scrappiness. The refs didn't want to lose control of this game. They maybe made a little bit of a statement not to make a play like that again, or else you will get ejected.
He did get ejected.
However, the outrage from the outside media is a little unwarranted, in my opinion. And I agree with them. I do think it was a flagrant 1. But I think the reasoning is you can't eject the MVP. He's the MVP. You can't do that.
That was one. That was Stephen A. Smith.
But that's just horrible reasoning.
I agree.
The rules don't change. The line doesn't move because of the name of the player. The rules don't change for each individual player. There's one rule book, and every player has to follow the rule book. If the refs deem that a flagrant 2, then Nikola Jokic or the 12th guy on the bench, Shaquille Harrison, that should be a flagrant 2. It should be applied evenly to each player. I'm struggling with it a little bit. I do think it was a flagrant 1. I will concede that.
Okay.
Because I agree with Ryan. I don't think it looked really bad live. It didn't look good live. And you see Cameron Payne go down. He might have sold that a little bit. He didn't get hit that hard in the face. Yeah. There was clear contact to the face, and it could have been a really bad play. He could have broken Cameron Payne's nose, maybe even concussed him if he caught him with the elbow or something like that. So I think that play definitely could have gone far worse than it did. But it wasn't. I don't think it was warranting an ejection, especially in a physical playoff elimination game. Maybe in a regular season game, you give him an ejection, but I don't know if in a playoff game where things get more physical, things get more intense, there's more on the line, I don't know if you necessarily eject him. So I would agree with you. I do think it's a flagrant 1. However, I do completely understand why it was a flagrant 2. And based on the lettering of the law, I agree with the flagrant 2 call. If that makes sense. I don't know if
No, I understand. Look, we can agree to disagree a little bit. I think at the end of the day, you and I agree, but I know you're saying you can see where they're coming from. I just we don't have to harp too much on this. I just don't like the inconsistency amongst other playoff, calls in the past. And, I know it's hard to have consistency across years or across even multiple weeks of games, but I just think when a guy has no history of past flagrants, especially, Jokic doesn't have a history of whacking guys, unlike Draymond or something like that, or Grayson Allen or something, so I just think that a guy who doesn't have a history of that, I think that they should have cut him a tiny bit of slack and just been like, look, we know you didn't do it on purpose. We'll give you a flagrant 1. Don't do it again. I think it would have made for a more entertaining end. And I think that's kind of what Stephen A. Smith's point was when he said, you don't eject the MVP like that. It's like, man, we want an entertaining game 4. It wasn't malicious. He doesn't have a history of doing it.
Ended up being an entertaining game, to be fair.
To be fair, it did. Denver, for some reason, played better without the MVP. Who knew? Maybe they should just get rid of him next time. I don't know. But anyway, I don't know, Trevor. There's nothing else I have to say. It was great.
I agree with you.
great job by the Suns, terrible job by the Nuggets, and I can't go against the Suns in the next series. I was being a bit overzealous when I said that the Suns will be the NBA Finals champions, but I really do think they will be if the Nets aren't there. If the Nets aren't there, I think the Suns can win the finals, and I think they will. But unless you have any final thoughts on your Suns, I think we can move on.
Just one quick one quick final thought.
Yeah, go ahead.
I love my Phoenix Suns. I want to thank my Phoenix Suns for providing me such incredible happiness through these last few months. And a little bit of a side benefit is Ryan wanting to pull his hair out just because he got it wrong so many times. And I know that hurts because I've been there, Ryan. I've said it about the Cleveland Browns, and part of me didn't want part of me wanted the Cleveland Browns to fail. I didn't want Stefanski to win Coach of the Year. I didn't want Baker to be parading around like he's the second coming of Tom Brady. But the Browns got what was coming, and what's coming for my Phoenix Suns is a title. I fully agree with you about the Suns winning the championship. One catalyst to that is I don't care if Brooklyn's healthy or not. We're a better team than them. That'll be a discussion for another day. Anyways,
wow.
I want to talk about the next series, which is the other series in the Western Conference, which seems to be far more interesting, is the Jazz and the Clippers. The Jazz jumped on Los Angeles 2-0. The Clippers won Game 3 last night at home. They have Game 4 at home tomorrow night.
Yep.
Ryan, what are your thoughts on this series, and do you still think the Jazz will come out of this series?
Yes, and this series is playing out exactly how I anticipated, Trevor. I think we both saw the Clippers losing Game 1, although it was tougher than I expected from the Jazz, because they were coming off a 7-game series against Dallas. Los Angeles was. It was tougher than expected, but Utah got the job done, which is what great teams do. Game 2, they come out, take care of business. Donovan Mitchell, sensational as always. I wanted to talk about Game 2 a little bit because I think this is kind of exactly what Utah needs to do. I mean, look, it really comes down to one thing, Trevor, and one thing only. Utah has to hit their threes. And we say this about a lot of teams, Trevor, but none more so than Utah, because you pointed this out before. Utah takes the most threes in the NBA. And not only that, but I think they might be the best three-point shooting team in the NBA. So, I mean, they really need to continue to do that. And Game 2 is a perfect example. They shot 51% from threes at team. That's exactly what they have to do. Game 1, they were abysmal from three in the first half especially. I think at one point they were 3 for 22 from the field. And they still won that game. So, testament to Utah for bouncing back and having, strong mentality and, mental fortitude and pushing through and winning that game. But my point is Utah needs to hit their threes. And, I think they have been in the series so far. I think in Game 3, Los Angeles, Kawhi just showed up. I mean, Kawhi is one of the best to ever play, one of the best in his generation. You can't count him out. You can't count them out. You just can't. And I fully expect Los Angeles to come out and win tomorrow's game as well. Although I do think that ultimately Utah will win this series in 6. Like I said earlier, I think Utah is the better team. I think they're better coached. I think they're more disciplined. And I think that when they get down in a hole against a team like the Clippers, I expect them to come back. I'm not sure if I always expect the Clippers to come back. So I just think that Utah has the upper hand in this series. I think that Paul George is a little too inconsistent for me. He did step up a big time, and he did step up, Trevor, in Game 3. I think he did shot over 50 or 55% from the field. And so he played very well. But in the first 2 games, it was a classic shooting 40% from the field. Not a great game. Kind of not really noticing him, right?
Right.
So I don't know if he's going to step up. I do want to note one other thing, Trevor. Reggie Jackson deserves credit, and not just for this series, but for the Dallas series as well. He's been sensational, and he has turned into a 35-minute-a-game starter for this team. He had 29 in a Game 2 loss, Trevor. That's exactly what he's been doing in every other game in the series, and even in the back half of the Dallas series. He's putting up 20 points plus in almost every game. That is sensational, scoring for their third scorer, and it's exactly what they needed because behind Leonard and Paul George, they don't have a bona fide third scorer. They have a bunch of role guys, but they needed someone to step up, and Reggie Jackson stepped up big time. So I gotta put some respect on his name. Pat him on the back a little bit. He's been playing sensational, and he's been consistent. So I had to call him out, but ultimately Utah's going to win this series. I think they're the better team. I think they have the best. I think they have actually the best player. I think Donovan Mitchell's been the MVP of the playoffs, and I think he'll be the MVP of this series.
Tough to argue with that. Donovan Mitchell has been absolutely sensational. He even had a pretty solid game 3 where he went for 35 and 5 or
That's
35
okay.
and 4 and a couple steals.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, honestly, his worst game of the series too, which is the
Yeah,
funny
no,
thing.
seriously, yeah.
And you said this series is playing out exactly as you thought it would. This series is actually playing out exactly as I thought it would. And
There you
that's
go.
I said it'd be the Clippers in 7.
Yeah.
I didn't expect the Clippers to win either of the first 2 in Utah. They had to play a really hard 7-game series against Dallas. Then you turn right around. 48 hours later, you have to play a game in elevation against a team that's well rested. Then you only get 1 day in between and have to play another game in elevation. So I wasn't surprised they went down 2-0. And I told Ryan off the air, and Ryan will attest to this. I said, pump the brakes. This series is not over when Utah went up 2-0. I said the Clippers are going to come home. They're going to win 2 at home. And this is going to be a best-of-3 series. And I think the Clippers are the better team. Ryan thinks Utah's the better team. I think the Clippers are the better team.
Okay.
Because the Clippers have, and Paul George is a little bit of an X factor here. The Clippers have 2 all-star capable players, whereas Utah only has 1. I should say the Clippers have 2 all-star capable. Hold on. The Clippers have 2 all-star, borderline superstar capable scorers, where Utah only has 1. And Paul George has been inconsistent in this series. He was fantastic in game 3. He stepped up big time. Kawhi Leonard had a great game 3 as well. So for me, if those 2 play like they did in game 3, the Clippers are winning this series. And even if one of them doesn't, Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris, Nick Batum, and Luke Kennard has been very good for them off the bench this series as well. They've been really stepping up big time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think the Clippers can match Utah's depth. As I said at the beginning of this series, both these teams are deep. Utah has 2 fantastic guys coming off the bench in Ingles and Clarkson, who are both up for the 6th Man of the Year award. But the Clippers have guys who can come off the bench too. Luke Kennard can give them really good minutes. Playoff Rondo can give them really good minutes, although I don't know. He did not play in game 3, actually, which is a little surprising. And what the biggest difference was is the Clippers have 2 all-star caliber scorers where the Jazz only have 1, right? Because there's a lot of similarities between these 2 teams. They both shoot the 3 well. They both can defend. They both have really good, I would say, perimeter defenders. And Utah has a good rim protector. The Clippers don't. But I thought the biggest difference, and they're both deep, but the biggest difference is the Clippers have that second guy, and then they have a lot of role players who can be the third option. Utah kind of has Mitchell, and then they're kind of scrambling for the second and third options. Mike Conley coming back, I think, will help with that second option, particularly from the outside. And I think that's a big thing to note is Mike Conley has not played in this series. I don't know if he's going to play tomorrow. I do
expect him to play game 5.
Okay, I do think he's going to lose. I do think Utah is going to lose without him tomorrow. If he plays, I would still go Clippers, but I definitely think the Clippers should be favorites without Mike Conley tomorrow. But the point is, don't pump the brakes on this Clippers team. They got down 0-2 against Dallas at home. They came back and won 4 of 5. They got down 0-2 against Utah. They dominated game 3. And I think that sent a message to Utah, right? When you get beaten like that in a game 3, that sends a message like, okay, like, I don't think Utah should think that they're not capable of beating the Clippers, but Utah made 19 threes. They made 15 of the 17 free throws, and they shot 43% from the field, which isn't great, but they lost by 30. And I think that sends a message, and I think that gives the Clippers a lot of confidence. Like, okay, we can beat these guys. We just need to play our way, and they can't stop us.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to say 2 things, and then I'm good to move on. First, I want to say that here's the thing. While I did say Utah in 6, make no mistake about it, the Los Angeles Clippers still have the best potential in the Western Conference. I know the Phoenix Suns made it to the Western Conference Finals, but if the Clippers played up to the level that they're capable of, they could beat every single team left in the West in 6. If they played to their level they're capable of. They could beat the Suns in 6. They could beat the Jazz in 6 as well. If they played up to the level they're capable of. They have the talent. They have the team. They just don't always play up to their peak level, their peak performance. And also, I wanted to note that, Trevor, I do disagree with you on the fact that Mitchell doesn't have another guy who can just kind of be a finisher or a facilitator. They have 2 6th Man of the Year finalists. They have the 6th Man of the Year on their team. The biggest X factor for the Utah Jazz is Jordan Clarkson. He is the biggest X factor for this team. Mike Conley coming back is going to be a major help. But make no mistake about it. The 6th Man of the Year has to play like the 6th Man of the Year. And if Jordan Clarkson plays the way he did in, for example, game 2, where he went 6 for 9 from 3, 9 for 15 from the field, they're not going to lose
Mhm.
many games or any games. When he has 24 off the bench, I mean, they're not going to lose a lot. So he, in my opinion, is the X factor. If he plays at the level of sixth man of the year, I think they win this series as expected in 6 games. But if he struggles really bad, all bets are off. So I just want to talk about that because I think Clarkson is someone to note. And I think that he's very important to the Jazz's success.
I agree with you there. I just think Utah's similar to Denver in that they have guys who can be a number two, but they don't have one consistent number two on a nightly basis. But with that being said, Mike Conley is close to that guy. We'll see how he looks coming off an injury. But Ryan, we are going to move on from that series and switch conferences to the Eastern Conference, which is a couple of very interesting series as well.
Yeah.
I believe we're going to start with the series that is now 2-2 today, and that is the Bucks Nets. And Ryan, you and I both had Brooklyn, but the one thing with Brooklyn was injuries, and injuries are definitely biting Brooklyn in the butt right now. What do you have to say?
Yeah, I mean, I'll make this brief, Trevor. I mean, why do injuries always have to derail my predictions? All right, look, I know. Look, I know the teams can't make excuses, but I mean, as a predictor, I feel like I can, right? I mean, big man Anthony Davis got hurt. Now Kyrie Irving and James Harden get hurt. I mean, what is happening here? It's just a little unfortunate. I said Brooklyn in 5. I stand by that prediction if they remained healthy. I think they win this in 5. I think they won today's game. I even think they might have swept Milwaukee. I think with Harden healthy, I don't think they'd lose that game 3 and put up 83 points. But I can't deal in the ifs, ands, or buts, and I have to talk about what actually happened. And what actually happened is Kyrie Irving got hurt along with James Harden, and now they're down to just Kevin Durant as their lone superstar. And the question is, can Brooklyn get by Milwaukee with only Kevin Durant and not Kyrie or Harden? Because that's what they're going to have to do. Make no mistake about it, Trevor. Harden's not coming back this series. Kyrie's not coming back this series. Now, one of them will come back next series, if not both. But they need to make it past Milwaukee, and I don't know if they can. This is a pure toss-up for me. If I had to choose, I'd go Milwaukee, actually. Because it's just so hard for me to bet on a team that doesn't have 2 top 15 players. It's really, really hard to do. And I mean, look at the Golden State Warriors against the Raptors. They lost 2 top 15 players and they lost the series in the finals. And I think the same thing's going to happen here to the Nets, unfortunately. I never like to see a team lose because of major injuries, but I think that might be what happens. Because, Trevor, here's the thing. I think if Durant got hurt and Kyrie got hurt, they would win this series. I think if Harden was healthy, they would be the favorites still. Because here's the difference. Kyrie and Durant, they're finishers. They score. They're not facilitators. James Harden is a facilitator. He makes his teammates better. Does Durant make his teammates better? I don't really know if he does. Durant does his thing. He finishes teams off. He's ice cold. Easy money snipers is his nickname, He's one of the best shooters ever. He's one of the best shooters ever. Might even be the best scorer of our generation, Trevor. He might be the best scorer of our generation.
Yeah. He's up there with Devin Booker and a couple others.
Colin Sexton, yeah. But he's not a facilitator. He doesn't make the teammates better. He doesn't get them involved easily. He's not a guy who passes, and he's not a guy who's been known to make a lot of passes. And he has to play like an MVP if they want to win this series. And today wasn't enough. He went 9 for 25, 1 for 8 from 3. That's nowhere near enough. He's got to go at least 50% from the field, 40% from 3, and put up at least 30 a game if they want to pull out this series. Blake Griffin's also going to have to step up. I need him to step up big time. And Joe Harris has to step up as well. I need better than 3 for 8 from the field and 8 points. I need Joe Harris to step up big time. Some of their guys have to step up. I don't know if they will. Yeah, we'll see what happens, Trevor. But I'm not liking, their odds when both their guys are hurt, Kyrie and Harden. And, Milwaukee's just a healthier team, and they have the momentum right now. So we'll see what happens. But it's going to be a very interesting series, that's for sure.
I agree with a lot of what you said, and that's kind of a rarity on this podcast. I pretty much everything you said. I actually agree with you on the Milwaukee prediction. And I think based on the injuries, it's hard not to like Milwaukee. They seem to have found a formula. I don't know if they seem to have found a formula, but I think injuries have definitely been in Milwaukee's good fortune this series. Giannis has been great these last couple games. Middleton stepped up these last couple games. But I want to highlight one other guy, and that's PJ Tucker. And you and I both will agree on this, Ryan. I absolutely
Yes.
love watching PJ
Yes.
Tucker play basketball. You don't see it as much in the regular season, but in the playoffs, this guy is an X factor. And today he went 5 for 8 from the field. He hit 3 threes, gave him 13 points, 7 rebounds, and he did what few can do. And he made Kevin Durant inefficient. He frustrated Kevin Durant, and he got in Kevin Durant's head. Kevin Durant went 9 for 25 from the field, which is sub 40%. He had 5 turnovers and was a minus 23 on the court today. And just for comparison, Brooklyn lost this game by 11. So PJ Tucker was huge today. He has been huge in this series for the Bucks. And before the series started, I thought Milwaukee had a chance, but I went with Brooklyn because of the talent. Obviously, that's all changed now that they're injured. Brooklyn doesn't have the depth to complement injuries like some other teams do.
Yep.
But I want to talk about James Harden. James Harden, and I've said this multiple times, James Harden is the most important player for this Brooklyn team. Kevin Durant is the best player, but Harden is the only player on this team that can make others better. Kyrie Irving is kind of like a score-first guy. Kevin Durant's a score-first guy.
Yep.
Harden's a guy that can get others involved. Harden's a guy that can throw lobs to Blake Griffin. Harden's a guy that can find Joe Harris for a 3. And Harden is just as good of a shot creator for himself as the other two. And that's what makes Harden, the most important player for this team. So with all that being said, Game 5 is going to be really interesting because I do think coming home will help Brooklyn. So I don't know who's going to win Game 5, but I'm gonna go with the Bucks winning this series. It's a little bit unfortunate because I really wanted to see this Brooklyn team play my Phoenix Suns in the finals. It could still very well happen. Maybe Harden or Kyrie come back, or Kevin Durant puts his team on his back.
He could,
and they are able to get out of the series. But I do think Milwaukee's going to win based on injuries. Giannis is playing really well. As I said, PJ Tucker's been huge. And then final thing I want to highlight is, and Jeff Van Gundy said it on the telecast today, where was Blake Griffin? And particularly, where was Blake Griffin in the second half? Was he hurt too? Because Ryan, I don't know how closely you watched this game. From the middle of the third quarter on, I did not see Blake Griffin come back into this game.
Yeah.
And I don't know where he was, what he was doing. Maybe he just wasn't the right matchup for them, but I thought he was the best individual guy to guard Giannis. And I thought he was doing a really good job on him, forcing him, to take jump shots, or when he was driving to the paint, he was very good about getting his hands on the ball, forcing turnovers. He even took a couple charges on Giannis as well, one that was actually overturned due to a challenge. But where was Blake Griffin? Was he injured? I don't know. But if he's hurt, I mean, Brooklyn is in a world of trouble because there's not much you can do without Blake Griffin, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden. They got Jeff Green back, and he was okay for them today, but he's going to take a couple games to get back into the full swing of things. But yeah, moral of the story is injuries are haunting Brooklyn right now.
It's as simple as that. And Trevor, now that you bring up Blake Griffin, I agree. He only played 25 minutes. I don't know where he went. He disappeared. He didn't play.
He didn't play in the second half.
He didn't
I think
come
he
back.
played like 6 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I couldn't tell you. He was definitely the best player to guard Giannis, in my opinion. He's the only one that has the body type to be able to do it. Claxton's too skinny and long, and he's just
Claxton doesn't have the strength.
He's not a polished defender.
Foot coordination. Right.
And then Durant's also too small, too skinny, I should say. He just can't. Giannis will bully him.
Or if you put a Bruce Brown on him, not tall enough.
And DeAndre Jordan's not getting playing time. So I don't really know why DeAndre Jordan's getting zero playing time.
Only player that didn't play today.
That's a little weird to me. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but he's not playing. So, just keep that in mind. So, yeah, I don't know. And the only other thing, I agree on PJ Tucker. I talked to Trevor about this, off the air as well. I think PJ Tucker is very underrated as a leader on and off the court. I think that he was I think he was the soul of that Houston Rockets team. And I think he's becoming the heart and soul of this Milwaukee Bucks team. I think he's a guy that everyone can get behind. He can rally the troops. And I think that that's exactly what every team needs. And I think that's what he's doing for the Bucks. And I really like that. I really like seeing his fight. I really like seeing his, fire. You can see it, Trevor. You can see it. You can see how intense he plays every second on the court. You can see how much effort he gives in every defensive possession. I just love to see it. So I'm glad you brought him up. But, we can move on. What, you want to say one more thing? Say one more thing.
One more thing. Sorry. Real quick. I want to build off the PJ Tucker thing just for like 10 more seconds. Sure. A lot of these championship teams now have obviously unbelievable scoring, unbelievable,
Mhm.
skill.
Yeah.
But another common theme, and we saw it with Golden State, and I'm going to tie it back to my Phoenix Suns. A lot of these championship teams now, and I think every team needs one. They need a fiery, intense, vocal, physical, tough player, and that's Jay Crowder for my Phoenix Suns. You think of guys like Draymond Green. I think back to that Toronto team, a guy like Kyle Lowry, PJ Tucker for the Milwaukee Bucks, PJ Tucker for the Houston Rockets.
Mhm.
A lot of these great teams now, and you don't see it much in the regular season because the regular season is obviously just a different animal than the playoffs, but it comes out in the playoffs. The fiery, the intensity, and the physicality of a guy
Yep.
like PJ
It's
Tucker can really disrupt great players and great, opponents
Yeah.
that he has to go up against.
It's what I saw from Blake Griffin in games 1 and 2 of this series. He had that fire, he had that passion, he had that effort, and I need to see more of that from him. He seems to be the guy that can be their sort of on the court fire, on their court inspiration, on the court fight. So you're right. Every team has to have a guy like that, and I think he's who has to step up and take that mantle for Brooklyn. Because I don't think Kevin Durant will. He doesn't have that. He just doesn't have that mentality.
You're right.
So
You're right.
we'll see what happens. It's going to be a great end of the series. I'm excited to see what happens, and hopefully one of Kyrie or Harden can come back because that would make it more entertaining. But with that, Trevor, we can move on to the final series. College football related. We have not talked about college football in months, Trevor, since I believe the month of January.
College football.
College football. I almost forgot.
You sure
about
that's still happening or what?
I know, right? It's been quite a little bit. It's been quite some time. But regardless, there is some news this week, Trevor. The College Football Playoff Committee is meeting this week to discuss an expansion of the playoff. Not from 4 teams to 6, not from 4 teams to 8, but from 4 teams to 12 teams. And Trevor, I wanted to get your thoughts on what you think of this. Is this the right decision to expand the playoff to 12 teams? And if it is, great. If not, what would be the best number?
This is really interesting because this has come completely out of nowhere.
Yes.
And Ryan, I'm sure you and I know exactly why they're expanding it to 12 teams, which you and I think are going to agree on this is too many. It's money, more games on ESPN, more primetime games, more ad revenue.
Doubt about it.
More money for the NCAA, none of which will go to the players, which whatever. That's a different argument for a different day.
It is.
But with that being said, no, 12 teams is too many. It waters down, it waters down the achievement of getting into the college football playoff. I was for an expansion. I wanted to go to 8 teams, the 5 Power 5 winners and 3 at-larges. Now I think the new format's going to be the 6 conferences winners and 6 at-large. Look, Coastal Carolina was a great story this past season, but if they play Alabama or Georgia, it's going to be 45-0 at halftime. And that's what's going to happen in some of these early round games. Alabama's going to play a Boise State. Alabama's going to play a good Power 5 team. Who was in the 10 to 14, 15 range last year in college football? I don't even know.
Cincinnati.
Yeah, they'll play a Cincinnati, and it's going to be a 40-point blowout. But Cincinnati got to say they made the college football playoff. I disagree with the 12 teams. I think 8 is a good number. I would be fine with 6. Because I do think the college football does need a true playoff format. Because I think the 4-team thing has kind of, I don't want to say ruined the sport, but it's the same. It's the same 3 teams every year. It's Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, and Georgia, and maybe Oklahoma. So I should say that it's the same 5 teams every year. And now you expand it to 12 teams that might even out recruiting a little bit better. It might give some other teams a chance. And
it will. Yeah.
It will. And I think college football is looking for more money because who doesn't want more money? And I don't think they're really thinking about this, but the cool thing of it might be a Cinderella type story, which you see in college basketball all the time. Can we see that same type of thing in college football? I don't think so. But maybe a team like Coastal Carolina, BYU, Cincinnati, a mid-major team that can get into the playoff now, make a run. I think that'd be a very cool thing to see.
Yep.
But yes, 12 teams is too many.
Trevor, yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. I think we both agree 12 is too many. And I think that, you're right. The NCAA moved it to 12. Trevor, can I ask you this? How many people were really calling for the NCAA to move the playoff from 4 teams all the way up to 12 teams? I don't think anyone was asking for 12. I don't think anyone was asking for 12. I think most people were saying, hey, Let's move it to 6. Let's move it to 8. I think those are the most common numbers, and those are the numbers I think are the best numbers. I think 6 might be the best. I think 6 might be the best number of playoff teams. And this is because, look, you're right. It's the same 3 teams, Clemson, Ohio State, and Alabama, and then a miscellaneous 4th every single year. You need to change that. You need to give other teams incentive, competition. You need to even out recruiting.
Exactly.
And this will do that. This will allow, 4 teams to make it in that won their conference, and then maybe the 5th conference winner if they're strong enough, and then 1 or 2 at-large bids. I think that's fantastic while giving a bye to the number 1 and number 2 seeds, letting the other 4 teams battle it out. I think that's great. I think it'll add to the excitement. I think it'll give teams a better chance. Because, Trevor, how many years now have we been sitting here talking about how the 5 seed or the 6 seed might deserve to be the 4th seed?
They do. It's the argument every year.
We've said it for years, right? Notre Dame would make it one year, and we're like, well, another team should have made it, right? I mean, it's happened year after year, and I think that's why 5 and 6 should deserve to make it, because it's always really close. And I think you're right. You make a great point about Coastal Carolina, because there was a big drop-off after 6, I would argue. Once you get to that 7 to 12 range, especially the 10 to 12 range, there's a significant drop-off in teams. So I think that going to 8 is okay, but after that, the drop-off is too big. So I think that you got to make it 6 or 8. But, that's just my opinion. I think it makes it more exciting, more fun. And, go ahead. I know you have something else to say.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And it feels like every year there's always about 6 teams that have a legitimate argument for the playoff. And 2 of them get left out, and you're like, okay, maybe we should expand this to give 5 and 6 a chance to get in. Mm-hmm. So I agree with the 6 completely. I think they expanded it to 12 because this became more of a thing last season. And some of these really good mid-major schools, Cincinnati, Central Florida, I'll throw in Coastal Carolina. These schools were like, what do we have to do to get into the playoff?
Yeah.
Because under the current format, it is impossible for us to get into the playoff. So one solution was, should the not the Power 5 conferences, but the other division FBS conferences, should they just do their completely own playoff? And I don't think the top mid majors like that idea, because they really feel like they can compete with the top Power 5 teams.
Sure.
So I think this is a counter solution to that problem. I do think mid majors should deserve a chance to get into the playoff, because then why are they playing? You got to be playing for something other than to get into the Charmin Ultra Soft Toilet Bowl, which means absolutely nothing. Other than maybe one game on national TV over Christmas. So this was definitely designed to give mid-majors a chance to get in. This was designed for ad revenue. And I think this was designed to give more I think this was designed to try and break the oligopoly that's up at the top, which is the same 3 or 4 teams running college football.
Yeah, 100%. And it's not only about the money, it's about drawing more fans in. If you have a longer playoff, you're going to draw more excitement. Well. You're going to draw more fans in because more teams are in the playoff, and more people are going to be like, yeah, let's go. Like, they're going to be hyped up for the playoff. Yeah. And
you look at March Madness every year, and you saw Oral Roberts this year, a 15 seed get in the Sweet 16. Yeah. Who doesn't love that?
Exactly.
It's gonna be like that when Central Florida plays Alabama in the first round of the playoff, or however they design the format. Who doesn't want to see Central Florida beat Alabama in the college football playoff? That would be fantastic TV, and it'll be a very, very highly there'll be very high TV ratings for about the first 3.5 minutes, and then it'll be close to 0 by the 9-minute mark of the first quarter when Alabama's already up 21-0. But it'll be fun to watch. It'll be fun to watch Central Florida or Cincinnati or whoever else, Temple, I don't know, play Alabama in a playoff game. I think that'll be really cool. But let's not act like it's not going to water down the playoff.
Look, here's the thing. Trevor is over-exaggerating a little bit. I think it's fair to say that Cinderella runs can happen in football, especially college football, where the players are more inexperienced in big moments. Mm-hmm. I think that anyone can beat anyone, especially when they're top 12 in the country, right? It's not like we're
right.
I think that it's, it's still going to be some good games for the most part. And I think it'll be fun rooting for the underdog. And you couldn't really do that when there was only 4. So we'll see what happens. I hope they change it. I hope they don't change it to 12. While it's better than 4, I think that there are better options than that. And I think we can both agree on that.
I agree.
But Trevor,
good way to leave it.
I think that's a good way to leave it. Unless you want to say anything else, shout anything out before we go.
Sure. I got one more thing to say. First, I want to highlight my U of A Wildcats.
Okay.
They're currently up 15-2 in Game 3 of their Super Regional College Baseball Series against Ole Miss. So they are well on their way to the College Baseball World Series. We talk all the time about SEC. Well, give my Pac-12 Wildcats some love.
Okay.
I'm joking. But give my Wildcats some love. They are going to the College World Series for baseball. And I think it's fitting that we end the podcast with a little Go Suns. Devin Booker, Chris Paul. Great night to be a Suns fan. Oh, shout out the Phoenix Suns fans who were in Denver tonight. That was awesome to see after the game. A sea of black and orange. And yeah, just a great day. I don't know about you, Ryan, but today's been a great day.
Oh man, Trevor, I wish I could agree with you. Today's been an interesting day. Let's put it that way. Kyrie Irving getting hurt, ruining my Brooklyn prediction. The Phoenix Suns sweeping my Denver Nuggets. It's been an interesting day. Not necessarily one that I expected, but it's kept me on my toes. But I think we had a good podcast here. I think we exposed the Denver Nuggets for the frauds that they were, and I think that that about sums it up, Trevor. But with that, we will be back next week talking about these other 3 playoff series that are still going on, and we will be back with a preview of the Western and Eastern Conference Conference Finals. With the final 4 teams left in the NBA coming up next Sunday. So, stay tuned. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll be back next week with another podcast.